How bad was the rain that you guys got here, out of curiosity? You get
It
it?
actually came down really hard.
Yeah.
I was away for a good chunk of a week, but when I got home, I saw everything kind of tossed and turned.
It rained enough that my car got cleaned finally after 2 years. Yeah. So I was happy.
It came down really hard at one point. Like, I can't trust the weather app anymore. It said like
it's
maybe
been
0.5
hot
inches
garbage for the
today.
last year.
And then it was 0.5 inches in like 15 minutes.
And that's the scary kind of rain, because that's when you get so much volume in a short period of time.
Oh yeah, the slides. Up in guys north, it was both the rain and the wind was howling up. You would not believe. I mean, I could not believe we didn't have any tree falls right on our property that you were at.
Jeff,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
But yeah, also, it at least pressure washed our car for us.
Yes, that's a plus. Yeah.
But let's get going. Keegan, going to have you. Keegan Kirkpatrick, the president and CEO and founder, right?
One of that is racing. It's very much a Three Musketeers kind of thing.
That's
you guys.
right. That's an excellent way to have you on the pod. So we're going to get into 3D printing today. That's going to be a prime topic. But as always, we'll kind of do a little bit of a catch up of the week with our key news. But let's also do a quick run of intros for ourselves, for our listeners. Demi.
Yeah, I'm Dan Smith. We lost our house on La Costa Beach a year ago, and have just met everybody, became part of the rebuilding effort pretty quickly after that.
Hello, this is on the couch. I lost my house as well in Big Rock, and working on rebuilding. And actually, I got my planning approval last Friday, official in the state.
Nice.
That's congrats.
Your bulk is okay.
The bulk is okay, exactly.
They're not too bulky.
You can break ground in another week or so, right?
Depends.
Depends which rules
How
you
rogue I
follow.
feel, depending on how cowboy I feel.
We're getting started this week. Are you a real man? Is the question. Are you a real man?
Exactly.
That's right. See you in 4 months.
So I'm Keegan Kirkpatrick. I'm the founder and CEO of ReBUild Construction Technologies, and I was actually standing at the top floor of UCLA Hospital, looking right at the flames as they were coming in. And from that day on, I've been trying to reach out to folks in Malibu and see if my company could help out in any way, try to do what we could for the rebuilding effort.
Great. Well, great to have you. Abe Roy, doing a bunch of rebuilds. Actually, things are moving along breathtakingly fast.
Don't you have 22 projects?
A little more than that. And that's not big. But things are moving though. And our first groundbreaking in Altadena next week. That's Supervisor Catherine Barger is going to grace us with her presence. So it's we obviously have gone through a lot, still going through a lot, but now you're starting to feel the momentum. It's exciting.
Abe never introduces himself properly. You also lost a house. You live in Big Rock. You had another house in unincorporated LA County, which burned down. He was the rebuild ambassador for Malibu at one point in time. That ended unceremoniously, but he's still kind of an authority for us.
Well,
I'm still waiting for my flowers.
Yeah, he's the de facto leader of the Malibu Rebuild Task Force, of which we are all a part. I'm Darren Graves. Lost family property on Big Rock Beach. We're in the process of rebuilding. We're about halfway through CDs, and we plan on submitting in June of this year for building and safety.
And I am Luis Tena, not Teña, Tena. I'm a local architect, originally from Spain, and I have, I don't know how many projects for this, but it's by I think 8 or 9. I have also from Woolsey, from the 90s, and just passionate about making things more efficient. I love Malibu.
And how's you are beautiful.
And also Malibu is very beautiful. Let's try to help with our designs. And super interested in tech in general, industrial processes, but keeping the good design.
I'm surprised I didn't see you in Orlando this week, brother.
In Orlando, and the IBS stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, I was in Maui surfing with my girlfriend.
That's
Sorry.
a priority.
Set for the week.
It was Valentine's weekend. Come on, you gotta.
Anyway, next year, Las Vegas. Maybe we should all go.
Yeah.
And then make a party out of it, right? I mean, it's a fantastic conference. Fantastic conference. It's huge. I actually did see one of your competitors, Coral. I think they also make the roller mongs and stuff. But Let's do a quick catch up of the week. The biggest news is, of course, they have set up a DUI checkpoint.
We shouldn't tell people. They should be caught, right? Frank, they get caught.
It was very funny. The city of Malibu sent out an email last night on one of their email blast lists saying there will be a DUI checkpoint in Malibu exactly tomorrow night. And so, like, you got to avoid, go back on Payuma and this and that. Council meeting, right? Council meeting on Wednesday, a special council meeting. What was the upshot?
So it was an appeal, right, for a project that was approved by the planning commission. So there was a group of neighbors that didn't really like it, and they appealed it to the council, which takes a long time. I think it was 1 year after. It was one of those projects where before being denied by the planning commission, I believe that they kind of cool out to be able to not be perfectly denied. So it was like, I was working while watching it, but it was interesting, and I don't know if we want to give a spoiler that the appeal was voted yes 4-0, so the applicants have to go back to the drawing board.
I mean, I don't know if you're spoiling anything. I don't think the general population is watching that later, right? It was an interesting meeting. Our guests, Malibu Township Council, they were in support of the appeal, right? You're on episode 16.
It was Malibu Township. Yeah, it was.
They did speak against the proposed development, and yeah, it was like an 8-bedroom, 9-bathroom house up on Cuthbert. They didn't like the size of it, essentially.
It's ostensibly a fire rebuild from Woolsey, correct?
Yeah.
Originally it wasn't fire, that they wanted to do more than beyond 50%.
And that's one of the things that is eventually caused them to lose.
How's, guys, what are you picking up? I haven't been to any other council meeting since Bruce took over as mayor. Any different in the way the meeting's being run?
I think there was only one or two, right?
Two, I think.
Yeah, and the next one is next week, which is a meeting. Yeah, this should be a big one on February 23rd. But in the meeting this week, the Cuthbert appeal, I know Bruce did a good job managing the crowd. He did take an authoritative position with the gavel, and maybe because of that, he swayed all the other council members' votes, because then he kind of controlled the conversation.
I agree. He pulled his attorney skills. He owned it. I actually felt bad for Marianne at some point, I have to say. And he also was very aggressive with Tyler. And I was also feeling for Tyler and for Akash. So it was one of those that, damn, he had the arguments, but they felt bad for the people that he was referring to.
So in other news, the city of Malibu sued the city of LA as well as the state of California.
And Trevor got up off his ass after Danny chewed him out,
We have no problems with Trevor. Trevor works really hard. Me too. Yes, Randy told us this was likely to happen, that all the jurisdictions eventually begin to crossfire, just in case there is a recovery. It doesn't mean that there will be, but if there is a pot of money, if they can get some of the to recoup some of their costs. It doesn't necessarily mean that the city of Malibu thinks the plaintiffs, the victims' case is super strong, but it could mean that. And as we know, Randy told us that we tentatively won on the overturning the demurs. That officially happened, I think, yesterday. So those tentative rulings are still in place officially.
So, but when you say we, means that the trial is moving forward and there's no
The demurs were attempts by the defense, being the city, the state, and the county, to stop these cases in their tracks at this early stage. Those were overturned, so we move forward.
Like, we're moving on to pre-trial or actual discovery.
So he's going to pay 2-3 year. A few more steps as well involved. There's going to be obviously the defense team is going to, according to Randy, might file writs and this, that, which will prolong the process. But nonetheless, the overruling of the demurs is a good step forward.
Right, there's actual grounds to proceed.
There's actual, exactly, yeah. So the city, what I was curious, it was a good press release. You guys read the press release? It was a good press release. It felt pretty heartfelt.
Agreed. And they're walking a fine line. I mean, they said, we still want to work with our partners, being the state and the county or whoever, while we're,
Anyway, I want to ask, Bruce and Trevor why they left MRCA out and SMMC.
Did they leave MRC? I don't feel that they left because they left MRC. It's just
I think that's probably why, because they're state agencies. They use the same umbrella, but
you think it's just all.
Well, yeah, but this is not surprising. I don't think it. That even the timing isn't surprising, right? Because we had the city of LA do the same thing just a couple of weeks back, and there is some sort of a deadline I think that's approaching or something.
So when's Pasadena filing suit? Yeah, I'm next.
I'm in favor of all of this, not just in terms of potential recovery funds, but, litigation can effect change. And sometimes it's the best way to do that, and we need to do that. Everybody needs to, I'm trying to really do accountability. Everybody needs to operate better the next time this happens.
What do you think that Argentina was looking to have a little bit of settlement money as well?
But what's it? The fact that Mali was suing too, like Olivia has posted this question the other day, like, is that gonna remove more money from you guys and give it to Malibu?
You're right, but the pot's enormous. I mean, I don't think that whatever Malibu's recovery would be as a city would, compare to the residents' recovery for the loss of all their.
So it's not like they lost a ton of buildings, right? The city lost economic development as a result of PCH closure.
But some of they have to fry some of their refi for, maybe it'll pay for the sewer line. Do you think?
Yes. We'll take it, whichever way it comes.
And we're really going on here about city business, but we this coming Monday on the 23rd of February, there will be a sewer presentation. They have the preliminary design done. Public Works is going to present that to the council.
So it's like timeline that is really good. Like
There's a timeline and there's a price, and it's all in there. So
And there's like diagrammatic details, so if you wanted to, you could draw the piping down PCH.
council had asked at one point, okay, what's the cost of the sewer line going to be, and then even per parcel, what would be the cost of adding an advanced septic system and a new seawall as an alternative to that sewer line? And that's all in this presentation. And it's like the numbers it's about double.
$127 million is the sewer, is what I saw.
Yep.
Right, and for those 300 homes on the beach, embodied.
But then I'll stay a little on down the north side.
The number for the seawalls and the OWTS tanks is 200 some million. So it's almost double when the assessment will be for this.
Not cheap. Not cheap. No, but rebuilding isn't cheap.
These are massive infrastructure projects.
And the fact that there's political will behind it to even have the conversation at this point is a really
Knows better than
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Especially because you've got 6 months if you're lucky before any politician in the country is not going to want to talk to you. Yeah, and then you've got Olympics 2028, which is just staring down the barrel of the lens, and that's everything like a black hole. So momentum's good. Who knows?
So that's a good segue. So Keegan, you wanted to be an astronaut, right? You're an aeronautics engineer.
Aerospace. There is a slight difference. Is that one's in the atmospheric sphere, the light goes out. This is where I go out. Yes. So.
Okay, but you wanted to be an astronaut, and then you founded this company. Tell us more.
Right. So I originally got started in the aerospace industry, but my career going all the way back to when I was in high school was always connected to 3D printing. I went to Rogers High School, Washington. Very kind of artsy kind of school, but amazingly, they had a 3D printing lab with 2 or 3 of those big old next engine 3D printing machines.
How many was this?
This would have been 2006 or 7 when I joined that. It was kind of one of the electives you could do in lieu of shop class. Now I've done that in junior high. So these were the big refrigerator-sized units from back in the day. It could bake it about the size of your fist if you were lucky. And they had multiple SolidWorks licenses and everything, but it was wild for a public high school. And so I got way into that, and I took 2.5 years of that, I think. So when I got to college for an actual aerospace, engineering university, I had 2 years of 3D printing and design experience on everybody else. And I got way into not only its applications for like industrial manufacturing and all the stuff that is really relevant to the aerospace industry right now, but what it could do for habitat design. And when I got out of that, I went right into work for an aerospace company that was doing a lot of rocketry development stuff. But this was in the middle of the sequester, which, for those of you who don't remember, around 2013, federal government did a broad-based cut across the board, and it absolutely hit science and engineering development really hard. It was functionally 100% hiring freeze in public, projects and 80% for the private sector. But NASA had enough money to throw around for one of their centennial prizes, which was all about big idea stuff that is like, this is going to be mostly design work. If, nut touches bolt, that'll be a minor miracle for this kind of project. And it was all about how you could 3D print a structure on Mars for habitation for a hypothetical mission in the future, and could that theoretically be applicable here on Earth? And it was all design. Some implementation had to be kind of specced out, but sort of senior level design type project kind of thing. And I put together a team in town, like-minded folks, and I said, I need a 3D design and manufacturing expert. Conveniently, one was over here in the conversation I was having with the guy who ran the design lab in the next room. That was Mal Petros, who came on to join our team as now our chief design officer. And then I said, we need to bring in at least one geologist, preferably an engineering geologist who's done the actual work out in the field.
Favorite people.
Yeah, and that ended up being Susan Jennings, who's been in the solar industry. If you've driven through Kern County and seen a solar field, she's probably helped build. And we put together what we thought was an not particularly interesting solution, which was like full build 3D printed structure that could be designed parametrically. You could just scale and generate the design you wanted in-house and then 3D print the whole thing using nothing but regolith found on site, so dirt, basically. We submitted that, didn't think anything would come of it, then we made it to the next phase of the challenge, and then the next, and then the next, until eventually we found ourselves in Flushing, Queens, going up against guys from Foster Partners and Columbia University. And we didn't make it, we didn't get past the finals. We lost to Foster's, who had this really interesting ice house design. Yes, you might have seen that one. It got quite a bit of press afterwards. But we were kind of the only ones who went there with a, like, no, we're not sending, all your life support systems and all your floor designs and then you print a shell. We're saying you can print the whole thing. And you can do this with just local sources of regolith. We completed our homework on the science of it all. And then we started getting phone calls from people in the construction space who were interested in, hey, could this actually be developed past the design phase in a practical application? And how can 3D printing as a whole sort of be re-examined on that? We went into kind of a hardcore R&D phase, made a lot of friends in the industry over the years, talked to the right people. And eventually we developed technology in-house that we've been able to use to fuse sand and dirt found on terra firma to be able to make solid structures. And that's still kind of in development. And we've now got 2 large area multi-material 3D printing systems that are non-regolith printers. So these are machines that 3D print in plastic, but they could take basically any feedstock of plastic available and make huge structures. The smallest of them is built inside of a 20-foot shipping container. And this is very much because we were lucky enough to find partners with this company out of Lithuania called X05D. And hopefully we'll have some more information about them announced in the too distant future, but that's all I can pick on that thus far. And these systems, we're currently talking with a lot of people who want to use this either to 3D print complex plastic structures or bioplastics for actual end products, or to use them to make preform molds for concrete, what have you, to where you could then 3D print out all your conduit lines and what have you, and then make your actual woven, masonry units.
Replace the wood forms that
Yes.
are presently being used.
The way we say it is you're not replacing the wood forms, you're replacing the diamond saw and replacing the specialist you have to bring on site who actually has to build out the preform, pre-plan all that stuff. You just do it all in an actual design file. And as anyone in construction knows, labor is turned into the real problem at the root of all of this stuff right now. So we see this as both a supply chain solution and a labor saving solution. And I know I said I wasn't going to advertise too much about my stuff on here, but unfortunately it turns into autopilot after a certain point. So cut that if you want.
Well, that's fair, but so just a question about the last thing you said. 3D printed formwork, is it recyclable after the job? Can it be broken down or reprinted?
It's designed to work with recycled PGKGs, PLA plus forms, biocomposites, which are getting to be really popular. So you can absolutely use recyclable materials in this.
And you have to 3D print it on site, or you can 3D print it somewhere else and bring it and then use the form.
Well, we had two printers and
Size probably, right?
yeah, it really just boils down to what space availability you have. The more kind of deployable of the units is the one that's built inside that 20-foot shipping container because it's already a ruggedized platform. Another one is a larger structure. It's like got a print area of like 13 feet by 19 feet by 13 feet. That's more palletized, so you'd have to like assemble that a bit more.
So more than the size of the machine, like how high you can be a form, like 10 feet high.
Really just inside that volume. So 13 feet would be kind of the highest you could go inside that large.
So now applicable to the fire ReBUild, this could be used to help people 3D print forms for reuse.
So maybe just a quick pause for the folks that aren't as much in the know in construction. So what we were talking about fundamentally is, let's say we are pouring concrete, right? And we create forms around it to shape the concrete. However, it takes time to set the forms. It takes time to saw cut the forms in place.
Yep.
And sometimes there are certain shapes that are very difficult to attain.
Really, I think but so even further back, that concrete is liquid when you first install it. So you need to take like 3 days to become like more sustainable. You can remove the form, but it takes 28 days to cure and have all their strength. So when you're pouring concrete, you have to think of containing the liquid on site with the reworks as designed by a structural engineer. Make sure it's very precise, very flat. So this form work is what is gonna happen. That's why when you see sometimes concrete walls that have the texture of wood, is because that was the texture of the wood forms. That's what everybody's like knows of.
Now we're talking about no longer needing those forms, but instead the border or the shell of the concrete is going to be 3D printed by a robot arm.
This is how they're building the newest Star Wars museum, right? I went to the explanation from the builders, and they did custom design for each of the shells in concrete,
Right.
that they did with 3D.
So it's going to basically open up more degrees of freedom for architects and designers.
Exactly. You can go in different design directions. You can potentially save labor by kind of hard to describe this over audio, but printing out not just the walls that hold the concrete, but printing out structures within that when removed would be where you have a conduit line for your conduit or your electrical columns or.
How's it broken down? Is it how do you remove the form? I guess.
Well, it's the plastic, so you'd have to go in with a drill, but you're not talking a die and saw to remove it. No. So it's something that is just got to eat through Plexic, which has got to be a much more.
Do you have the possibility of using, like I had a Yultai Maker 3S, it's a 3D printer for my projects, right? It's very small, like it's the size of maybe an iPad. I had like 50 of my projects printed in 3D, and I love it. It takes time.
Oh yeah.
So it has two different nozzles, two materials. One is a plastic, is a PLA.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that works as support for the PLA, because you go in layers. You start at the bottom, one layer. So when you're 3D printing over air, you need to build a platform first. So there is other material that is soluble with water.
Right.
So I put the whole thing in the water, and then after 24 hours, look, the 3D print. Do you have something like that for building?
Well, we're not a plastic supplier and all but this. For us, you'd really just have to come to us and say, hey, this is the material we want to use, and we have to just kind of check it against to say, hey, does our thermal control and feedstocks at the system actually be able to account for that? Generally, the answers have been yes. We have people who've come with us and saying like, hey, we want to use a head-face plastic. Dick, have you ever worked with that? And the answer for us is awful for that was no. Let us check with our teams and see what we can do. Turns out, yes, we can do that. So,
but it's very much different from what we've seen, like Icon, for example, that they do concrete 3D printing. So instead of focusing on the mold, they 3D print the walls in concrete, which I'm hearing is not allowed in California because of the seismic.
Because you can't print a There's a lot of issues that Icon has faced, and it's part of the reason why we decided to not print the structure directly, but print the things that can comply with existing structures, because you run into regulatory issues if you go the other way around. And Icon has addressed that as a company for like a business case by focusing heavily on doing humanitarian projects, looking in things that are very kind of high concept. They've got a lot of ongoing relationships with NASA. And the company is still really work, but they are dealing with a lot of the same problems that they're not the first concrete 3D printing company, and they are facing a lot of the same problems that have done in other companies that weren't able to find that path.
So the reason why it's important is certainly stopping the potential to get gross market acceptance.
Partly regulatory pushback. partly you got to get, your supers, your architects, and your actual builders to accept the product as something that they want to use, which is a real challenge that every single 3D, anything, not even 3D, alternative concrete solution has tried to come up with. Because if you present a builder, and we've all worked around these guys, something that they look at and they think that's going to break, that's just that's not this looks too I've often said don't make it too sci-fi or anything like that. They tend to be fairly resistant to onboarding that because construction is the most risk-averse industry you'll ever run into. That is changing because the market has forced us to adapt, given the new constraints that are upon it. But these guys tend to be resistant to that kind of stuff. You're also running into the problem that concrete, if you build a single structure that's just one big piece of concrete, well, now you have the problem that, forget rebar for a minute. What happens if your client wants to do an expansion onto that down the line? If you're working with cinder block or brick, you can go at that with a sledgehammer and it will have failure points along the mortar lines. You can plan for that, and you can build around that. But if it's a solid concrete wall, you have to go at it with a diamond saw. And you also have to now know, okay, how's the structural integrity of this thing going to hold up if there's any kind of void space? Am I cutting through the lattice? Is it X-rayed or rebar? Yeah.
So suffice it to say that, and this has been asked a number of times. I'll get forwarded a little reel or some TikTok video of somebody making a house with a robot arm, and in 2 days the house is done.
Oh yeah.
Right, is ready. And I've been asked the question a lot because people are trying to think of how quickly can they get in. A lot of senior elderly folks amongst us who are like, man, I can't wait 4 or 5 years for the house. We need to get into. They're looking at a lot of different solutions, and this keeps coming up, right? So what I'm hearing is that it's far from being ready to build the actual house itself. There could be components of the house that we could leverage the technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, again, just largely a regulatory issue. There's also the problem that regulatory agencies really aren't good at communicating with startups about how to kind of get their technology to integrate properly. Not casting any aspersions. That's just
We're facing that every day out here in Malibu.
right. But it is a thing of where regulatory agencies are used to things being a common way for a long period of time. They are not, by their nature, used to trying to communicate with people who are trying to change something year to year to year to year to year, or possibly month to month.
They rely on known data. And their data has to be in the state where you're building, and it has to be tested and certified by some other jurisdiction in the state. And so it's a long laundry list of, well, we can't do all that testing, so we're just going to go back to what you already know.
Yep.
And thus, construction never changes.
And then on the flip side of that, startups are often a little averse to trying to go and get a lot of those certification tests done. They just want to get to whatever is going to make money the fastest, because you succeed fast or you fail fast. So it's kind of it's an unsatisfying answer, but the problem is not technical. It's almost not even regulatory. It's a mismatch of priorities of how to.
Why haven't any of the large companies invested in this? Why is it in the start? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example, right? Driverless cars. We've had some technology giants like Google spend, billions to make Waymo a reality, just like Tesla is spending billions to make driverless cars a reality. And you need that at some level, right? So this is a revolution of that magnitude. Why do you think we aren't seeing the larger entities, which in the prop tech space, there are a couple of entities that are huge, like Home Depot and Lowe's, and where it's an oligopoly almost. Why don't we see that?
Well, I'll try to be kind of fair to people on this one, because 3D printing as a whole has gotten a lot of support from larger entities, just not 3D printing construction. SpaceX's bread and butter has been 3D printed for rocket engines. Relatively Space, I might get the name backwards, I sometimes get them wrong. Relatively Space is currently building a B of the heavy lift launch vehicle. It's almost with largely 3D printed parts. It's Northrop has got some really interesting stuff they've been doing in-house or been bringing in people from outside. 3D printing has gotten a lot of love from big institutionals. 3D printed construction, not so much. Now, part of it has been, I think, running into, if you're a large institutional, you've got lawyers who can tell you they haven't solved, the regulatory issue hasn't been solved yet. And that's just going to get people to shy away. If like, well, if I'm doing that, then this is
So uncertain.
They don't want to draw them all in.
And a lot of different languages, jurisdictions. Everybody's doing their own thing and they don't care.
Exactly. Other issues have been 3D printers. Anyone who's ever operated one in their own home work really well until they don't. And
It's a weird thing, man. They need to be clean and we like. I imagine putting a 3D printer on a job site that is dirty and stuff. How do you keep everything properly greased and properly leveled?
Yep.
Things settle.
And what you maintain yours very meticulous.
Well, I mean, I just have like a camera. I have like a fitting closer.
Take your website, and it looks like you either supply the printing machines, or do you rent them out, or would an architect come to you and say, "Hey, I want to print this house"? Would you loan it to them, or do they have to buy it?
they'd have to buy it for the time being. Now, our print heads are the components that ultimately have gone into this have been used in something like 150 different large area 3D printers around the world. So these things are built out to be extremely reliable. But this is a fairly recent change in the industry. Prior to the last few years, and I don't know how alone we are in all of this, the level of reliability was something to where you could, if you had enough site engineers on site babysitting a machine, you could produce a whole house in one good go and be fairly satisfactory. Or you have to narrow the parameters of what you can print to such a degree to where there's not going to be a lot of surprises. Builders aren't, despite the rep that some builders might get for like big on-spec projects or cookie cutter house designs, there is still going to be a lot of variations in design, morphology that, something that's too restrictive is going to be, something no one's going to want to put a lot of energy into. So, but I think build it further back to what you talked about, how 3D printing is something that can be a component element of construction rather than a holistic solution is definitely where we're starting to get to right now. But we've got to do more work as an industry of working with regulatory organizations to be able to build that environment to where everyone's complying in the right way, to where it's not just the builders of the machines, it's going to be the operators as well. What we're seeing right now is that more and more companies are showing up whose only raison d'etre is we are a company that just operates 3D printers. We are a job shop. We only do 3D printing. You come to us, you give us a design, we'll make it happen. And we have some friends and partners that we're working with who operate along that philosophy. That's a fairly new way of being. That might be a potential path forward for regulatory organizations to be able to talk and integrate and say, okay, we've been trying to solve this problem by working with the 3D printer manufacturers. We need to be talking to the guys who are the 3D printing operators because they're the ones who are ultimately responsible. They're responsible. Yeah, they're liable. That's the big one. Who is actually going to have to deal with the legalese on a lot of this? So something nobody's going to answer.
It goes to the certification of those operators, right? Like you need a certified nozzleman, do shotcrete or well, you need a certification to be a 3D printer operator.
And that may very well be the solution to a lot of it in this. For
More regulation is what you say.
regulation is key. Not necessarily
Where it makes sense.
Yeah, when necessary. Otherwise, you've got guys just saying no because nothing exists to bring it in the first place.
Don't you agree that also big part into changing the mindset of the regulatory bodies is hearing from people who want this then, right? So
That's a big part of it, and but that's often been a chicken and the egg problem because a lot of people don't want to take on the risk. Now, we've been lucky enough, again, I wish I could name names and announce them, and thanks to this one for Argus. We've been lucky enough talking to a few people who have kind of bigger projects they want to do where they can onboard the risk, where their goal is the vision of what the future of construction can be. We want to use the technology to unveil what that can be, that we don't have to look at just either stick build or cinder block or concrete pouring. We can do something more. But for your more kind of workaday contractors and journeymen, they need to have that regulatory environment a little more built out so that they feel like they're not taking on nearly as much risk, so that when they pitch a project, the people who are going to want this down the line are also going to know, oh, I've seen that on TV. I know that works. I know that this is a safe thing to be done. I know I'm not taking on a risk where a project has got some new piece of technology that is then not going to pan out. Yeah.
well, I have
That speaks to certification. Everybody use it.
So we are in disaster recovery mode, massive devastation. Hopefully the last one, but probably not the last one. I'm not talking about Malibu, I'm talking about the country overall. We have to build safely, swiftly, and at scale. I keep saying that. Break it down for us. How can the technology help us right here, right now?
With here right now, would be probably the concrete preforms would be the most valuable thing that we integrated. Although I've talked to other builders who had some interesting solutions for the plastic applications for this, even in potential fire risk areas. Although I don't want to take responsibility for any kind of stuff. I want to make doubly sure before we ever even approve anything like that. So let's say
Production engineer or something.
yeah. So let's limit this to just concrete preform walls. Anyone who was watching a lot of the news when these fires were going on saw that some of the few houses that weathered the storm fairly well were concrete built. If we can make concrete construction that is able to use rebar and work as an element into existing, shall we say, a site ecosystem, that is something that my contractor or founder would be very upset with me using that terminology. We could make it easier to be able to build concrete structures in fire-prone areas. The way I've kind of cheaper, faster, potentially more visually strikingly cleaner. Especially if you're able to use largely recycled materials, you become your own supply chain.
And use less concrete too, by making more efficient structure.
Exactly. And if you've got your own feedstock, you're not just bringing in new timber to go into a waste pile afterwards. You actually could become your own.
As you visualize this, how would it be? So we'll have like a shell, and then we'll set the rebar cage inside and then pour concrete.
You can actually set it up to where you can have interlocking mechanisms with the plastic that the rebar can then just kind of set into there and rest a little more efficiently as well. So I think
Also for comfort.
Which we do, right? I mean, now for the anchor bolts.
basic the motor through is what I was saying. Right. This is something you can just do in the design language and print and have me to talk. That Louis me to talk a bit more after this.
But actually, his house that he's rebuilding for his parents, he has a
Whistle waffles.
waffles. I have a project where I have a triangle. There's like a honeybee hexagonal crazy project. So I have a crazy slab with triangular. That would be great. Or your project.
Yeah, I mean, I'll need to have a mold made. Right now, the idea is to make out of wood, plastic, and it's alternative.
Yeah, for the
We're gonna make like 80 of them if you're gonna pour it in a lift debris. So
See, I think this is. I could see something like this hedging on if it's the architects and the designers who are envisioning new shapes and new forms that they can create, and this would be going into it.
And those have been the people I've loved talking to the most. I mean, if you ever have the time, go and pitch something like this to the kids over at SciArc or something like that.
Yale School of Architecture, go to like USC.
Okay. But I'm just like, you turn the kids loose on this thing, they'll come up with stuff that you as the guy who was working with the actual machine would have never thought of. But the point being, you could come up with scalable designs that could interlock with rebar, something that is immediately deployable to site and can make a lot of concrete structures very quickly. And potentially, we're talking here about building whole communities with more concrete involved, where less money and better, making it more desirable than it otherwise would be. You create a kind of architectural herd immunity to where when the next fire season comes in, and unfortunately we have to think in terms of when, not yes, there's just less fuel to feed it, and the fewer houses that can feed it, the less likely it is to spread to those that aren't built around that line.
So to extend your design, the waffle slab, that if you use the conventional methods versus if you use something like this, what's the difference in time? Of course, Keegan's gonna give me the first mission.
I really couldn't say what their estimate's going to be, right? But their estimate is going to be pricey, upwards of $400,000 probably, just for the slab and all the preforms.
And the labor to build that.
And it depends on their finished carpenters, are they good or not, right? The reliability of finished carpentry versus plastic, well, plastic is going to be a lot more reliable in terms of getting the angle you want, the curve of the reverse that you want. What is your, because every of those issues like corner, what for you is squares.
Well,
How thick is each layer of plastic?
smallest we can go, I believe, is just under 1/8 of an inch. It's all in metric.
So it's very main, so you can do like a curved shape.
Yeah.
A negative space instead of just
That's what I mean. Yep.
When our CPU did
humidity.
I don't want to make promises, but if you twist my arm, I could probably talk to our supplier about doing a possible custom unit that is a little more higher precision. Your print time for something like that would be a lot lower, but these are swappable, heads. So this is,
I mean, the size of that would be 4 feet by 4 feet by
12 inches, yeah, right? So, and then the strength needed to hold that much concrete, right? So the small unit you have is doable. Okay, question is what we have to come park it on PCH? Well, again, 20-foot shipping container units, so either park it on PCH or you grade you grade an area to be able
Or
to.
you can build it outside, a controlled environment.
Yeah, you just shift it and just bring them all down. Yeah.
So comparing it to other methods that I see people build houses on, as houses being built right now, they kind of say it's using ICCF blocks, so cement and for styrofoam,
Yeah.
where they build a house basically Lego style, put rebars in it, fill it with concrete, and the form, the cement for styrofoam, just stays and becomes the insulation of the house. So the whole thing comes with a I think a 26 R rating for the 26 for the wall itself. So in that case, I have the form, which is blocks, and then I fill it, and it just stays. In your case, I have to remove the form, and then add the.
Well, in his case, you have total freedom to any shape or form. With these blocks, you're limited to the block.
So this is really in the spirit of creativity and
Potentially same efficiency.
And
Yeah.
so let's frame creativity too. Creativity is not just making crazy shits that we don't need for fire. It's really creative and has to be more efficient. How to be creative and how to be more efficient.
You don't want those egg-shaped homes. Prevent that for sale.
And all that lumber normally gets thrown away at the end of the concrete work. That's no longer a pile of waste. Yep. Now it's plastic that gets melted down into new fibers to be reused on the next job.
That's the word, right? Like environmentally speaking, when we say we're using plastic, that's like, oh no.
Rather, you can also, if you're not, it depends on the job of what you're looking for. There's also these new bioplastics and wood blends that are not going to add any contaminants back in the environment, but also going to add kind of an interesting aesthetic to it as well. I mean, wood 3D printing is a new and wild field that's going to come online, and this can kind of play around with that because it's like a weird mission. You get fibers of wood, kind of like CLT.
yeah, the result is kind of a landau.
Yeah,
You have to.
so you can do like cool, like, making it look like you got tree roots along the outside of the concrete wall, and that's like part of the support structure rest and stuff. I don't want.
Miles, can we have sort of a smooth cast in place concrete wall facade with this, or would we always see the ribbed?
Well, you need to contain the two sides of the form there, right?
Right.
Because of the pressure.
But the inside of the film is also the rib, right? The way they go
So
about
the laminate layer comparing between each layer would be something that you would notice. That would be that wouldn't be observable unless you potentially 3D printed it, sideways. I guess it would be based on just what your orientation is, the actual block.
Could you trowel over it afterwards?
Or could you make a 15 wood print, like imprint, like relief, so then like that would come down to what your print resolution would be and how much time you're willing to put on it. All the time, or then only you, John.
And could the support structure become insulation? So instead of making just a thin form, I just make it thicker and make it like a
Well, now we're getting in a little bit outside of my personal area of expertise, to where it could, insulating foam is already a rock solid insulation to begin with. So that's something you could potentially add afterward. But using the plastic itself, maybe you could use that to make as a
People in line for thermal insulation, you don't need a lot of air proportion.
Which is
Plastic,
kind of where
which goes against the structural integrity, but that's where the biokinetics and
you could potentially
guys.
print out like kind of hollows in the plastic structure, or really kind of play through there.
And you would want to have that on the inside so that it can turn. So the outside of the form would be removed, but the inside would stay and then be the insulation.
Yeah, you may as well just put on it.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room. How much do each of these things cost?
So if Darren wanted to do it at his house, now just so you know, he negotiated a free desalination pod with our how to guess that was here a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, Seawell.
That's well because he was got snotted hard in the backyard.
That's not okay. The cheaper of the two is about $850. These are $850,000. Yeah. Okay.
So is it? I think you wouldn't expect consumers to buy this. Obviously, you'd expect contractors and builders to be
It's like concrete side would buy it. Because they sell out the value.
and they wouldn't have to be beholden to lumber prices, or
No hard to mark, is it?
the year of the carpentry workforce, right?
So Russell is those.
My carpenter dad did not, hopefully will not hear this podcast.
But it's important also to, there's like a chain of design, permitting and construction, right? Like from the concept design, the people designing, the same professionals, architects, they have there's a next level of precision that you need to work with. So right now, a standard home, you just put the plans in, that's it. Now you have to really think that you have to provide these files to the supplier to print that. So everything has to be, you're now precision to the one.
One or the other strengths of Revit.
Why is it any different?
Sorry, we were saying this. The other strengths of Revit. Oh yeah, Revit versus.
Well, why don't I say more? Why is it any different? Why does it have to be any more precise than the plans that are pulled today?
I have the bad and good luck to have been working on both worlds. Like I was a superintendent, PM, construction world, and also licensed architect. So I learned a lot while working on site how the architect puts something on the plans and then the Redic is different. And you have to adjust and come up with compromises. When you're dealing with high precision tools, there's no chance, there is no flexibility with what you're creating. Generate mistakes. So you need to know that, and even how you dimension your plans is a different mindset. Yeah. The way I dimension plans right now, I focus on the important dimensions, setbacks to property lines, key points of my designs, and then I give some flexibility to the builder always. And this is a different world and it's education from the ground up to the end. And having an in-house 3D printer helps. You spend more time. If I were to build a 3D model of my house, a physical model, I spend 1/4 of the time if I do it with regular like hardware and cardboard. With that, I have to model the 3D, scale it down, make sure that the walls are more than 0.4 millimeters, and then wait, and then it stays, and then you do it again. But the trade-off is this precision, automation, capability of expressions, like surface, like AI to many things. 3D printing is to creating physical objects.
To be fair, I think, if it was formwork, that's contractor means and methods. If I was going to go this route, I would get my DXF or ICF file, I'd export it to ReBUild or the concrete sub. Then they would work out the, idiosyncrasies that I'm unaware of, and just give me shop drawings, say, we're going to get this formwork from this model. Do you agree with those dimensions? They say, yeah.
I'm gonna disagree with you if I want. It's like one architect that designs a house, ships it to the structural engineer, and if they beef up the cones, you don't care.
At all you're doing. This is just formworks, right? Like I'm not examining the concrete subcontractor wood. That's the wrong. This is now expertise.
We can't put human cyber hate this file. They gave me cyborgs, architect cyborg.
It's hospital designer.
Well, his next question is going to be if can you get 3D print Van door?
You we don't want to talk about that because that's. I mean, you talked about terra firma earlier, so it's the same kind of all of that, right? The Earthships were actually kind of an initial inspiration for kind of our design, going all the way back to the Mars thing way back when. So this is something that's been.
So what kind of reception are you getting from the construction community so far?
More positive than you'd think, even from the old timers, amazingly. It's getting bad enough for the labor shortage in construction to where people are looking for any solution that comes up right now. And I don't want to say younger guys to imply that there's a bunch of 25-year-olds coming out of architectural school who I'm talking to for this, but the kind of more younger investment architect and real estate people are really interested in what this can be done to use this technology to be a differentiator from their competitors. Because if you can make something that is, looks like nothing else that's on the market right now with a new suite of tools, why wouldn't you do that if you're trying to grab a bigger chunk of the market? Yeah, it looks like a bright future for you and ReBUild.
What would you like if you had a wish list of a couple of things?
Don't do that to me.
What would you like to see happen in the overall sort of environment to get this technology into construction and building sooner?
I'd like to be able to connect to more people, honestly, more people like you guys to be on us, to be able to find folks who are interested in using new technology to solve an existing and pressing problem. And it would be great if there was, even more motivation from cities like Malibu that did not require a natural disaster to get to that point. But yeah, I want to connect to more people who are doing this kind of thing and put it in the hands of more builders. That's really all I'm looking to do right now.
Do you have any projects on what would be the next thing that you want to come up with in terms of renting?
Well, we have some patented IP that we've been working on for a while now that would make it possible for us to take excavated tailings, so what you would have left over from digging a foundation, and to use a process called transient liquid phase sintering to fuse that and turn that into 3D printed rock. Wow. So you would have no dirt removal at all, and you could make your stone structure right on site without having to bring anything to site.
So you have like two worlds. One is the actual robotics of the mechanics for 3D printing, and then the material that you use, right? Yeah. So you're doing I plus D both, yeah, basically. And what about in the robotics? Like, what could be, because one of your limits is gravity in a way, except for when you work in.
We have all this. That's purely SBIRs and STTR stuff that we're looking at right now. I want to do more stuff in space eventually, but right now we are focusing on just a break
on Earth with 9.8, whatever, like light, but you have to print from the bottom to the top. Is there any way to change that and print sideways?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So plastic, you can do overhangs more easily than you used to. Concrete has a really hard time doing overhangs because it's a liquid-based material, and it's even harder to do anything on top of it because it's just a form rate. And the material that we're working with that is 3D printed, it's actually called the technical term my engineering biologist would be mad at me if I didn't say this, is called welded tuft is what it's called. It's the same thing the Easter Island heads are actually made out of. We just figured out how to make it artificially. And most of the structures, the ancient structures around the Mediterranean, kind of from the Roman times, are actually made of that. I know everyone thinks of like the big marble and concrete stuff, but your average schmo in those days was actually living in structures that were made of welded tuff that was the product of like falling volcanic ash. So I ended up being way far away from what the topic on this one was. That'd be cool.
That's very cool.
But the advantage of this stuff is, from our own tests, is this actually cools to solid enough around the next time another layer would come on top of it. So about 23 seconds, I think, is what we timed it at.
Interesting.
And that was with no cooling fans or anything like mucking about with that. So with that, you could do overhangs, and you're not defying gravity, but you are working with it in a way that isn't going to come and fight you later on.
And what about the animal world inspiration? Like, spiders are the natural 3D printers. Gripping their webs. Well, they really get inspired by that.
Well, actually, the thing that inspired us for everything else, going way back to the start of before the company was the company, back when it was just the team, was actually the nautiloid patterns in shells, like nautilus shells, was the original thing. We designed a habitat that was parametrically scaled, could be 3D printed, that was based on kind of this interlocking, spiral pattern that could potentially scale infinitely. So that was kind of what, it wasn't the construction method that originally inspired us. It was actually the design of a habitat. And that informed everything else.
Saturday in Malibu should build the shell house.
The shell house, yeah. That's a money maker, yeah.
Building habitation in Mars is probably closer than you think to building an Eastern Mountain.
Because the discrimination now is on.
It's the same time, Same time.
Costs about as much money.
And the large Eastern Mountain so looks like Mars right now. Well, minus the graffiti that we have there.
Going to your original question, why PropTech hasn't really exploded yet? If you look at across the board of industries that have exploded, that it always happened where regulation wasn't there, like the internet boom, right? The dot-com, no regulation in the internet, we can make out. Problem with this is that it's so heavily regulated for good reason.
Yeah, like safety.
Yep. And neighbors complaining to each other. That's
right. It's ocean views. It's not recreational, right? I mean, where internet was sort of recreational when it was a view world. Well, this is good stuff, Keegan. Thanks for all the work that you're doing, taking the technology forward, and thanks for sharing all the insights with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I told you to put a lot of the phrase science. Yeah,
absolutely. We can't wait to see all this robot arms out here in our neck of the woods. We had the front row seat to seeing a lot of, very costly experiments being worked on in our backyards, and we are super excited. This group in particular, anytime in the it's all support will be in your corner.
Yeah, thanks guys, really appreciate all that. Thanks for bringing us out.
Absolutely. Thank you.